So when we look at the wrestling landscape right now, there's a lot of good stuff out there, and there's a lot of stuff out there that really has room for improvement. If you were to examine viewership trends, you would know that SmackDown has been absolutely on fire, including the fact that the show is now closer to 3 million viewers per week, and the Roman Reigns Bloodline segments are doing 3 million views. Now, over in the AEW category, they still have failed to go back and climb to hit that 1 million view mark, at least as of this recording. They've come close. They've gotten to 900K, and Collision's doing anywhere between 500 to 580, 600K, but they haven't really hit the numbers that they wanted to hit. So it appears like the peak of AEW, besides, of course, week 1 in 2019, was in 2021. Now, why is that? Why is WWE doing better than AEW? Here's what you have to understand. And this is something that's been talked about for a really long time by wrestling fans and people who observe and study the business. But the issue with AEW is whether or not they have CM Punk, whether or not they have whichever stars and whichever great matches they have. Historically in the wrestling business, outside of the hardcore audience, which is what most people on the internet are, including you and I, the casual audience, those that watch SmackDown, don't really care that much about match quality. If Tony Khan books a match like Chris Jericho versus Commander, a match that people like us are going to mark out for, or El Vikingo versus Kenny Omega, these are big matches for the hardcore fans, but the casual fans have no idea who these people are. And one of the big problems with AEW they've done for a long time is they've tried too much to book to the internet audience. Tony Khan has constantly been, and I'm not even going to go into his ego and, his self-masturbatory actions, which I can go into a lot, and it's quite annoying. It makes him kind of dislikable, even though it probably isn't a bad dude or anything like that, but there's no question that when people say he's basically a fanboy who happens to have $1 billion from his dad, he doesn't do anything to change their minds. What I'm trying to say is AEW tries to promote wrestling matches. Now, historically in wrestling, just promoting a wrestling match is not enough. You have to have a good story. And for decades, WWE really struggled to have truly compelling stories. There have been a few, but being consistent has been a problem. Now, with this bloodline angle, if you really go back and examine it, Roman Reigns has been a spectacular performer. The Usos have been leveled up. They're bigger than they've ever been before in their entire careers. You've got Paul Heyman in there, who's always great. He's never not been great. And then you've got Sami Zayn also, who that bloodline feud raised his stock, even though he's not directly involved in the bloodline right now, because right now the main feud in the bloodline is Roman Reigns versus Jey Uso, which will headline SummerSlam. The bloodline angle has not only captured the imagination of fans who may have been lapsed, who are now coming back to wrestling, but it's also helped elevate these careers. Now, what is the big thing? The big thing is week-to-week storytelling. For a guy who studies the business as much as we all hear about, Tony Khan has a real problem booking angles on his show. I understand that he wants to take a different approach than WWE, and I'm not saying that you have to copy WWE, certainly not in presentation, and AEW's talent roster speaks for itself. To be a good booker, it's more than just coming up with good matches, because the AEW roster is so jam-packed with talent, not even including the New Japan guys, the AAA guys, the people in Ring of Honor. Just the core AEW roster is so phenomenal that any match can kind of become a good match if two guys can work it out. You've got so many mixes and matches you have in the company. You got Jericho, you got Kenny Omega, the Young Bucks, you've got Keith Lee there, CM Punk, Samoa Joe. They all have their strengths and weaknesses, obviously, but it's hard to have a quote-unquote bad match in AEW. So the thing that AEW has struggled with the most, and the thing is, I've cut rants and promos about this for a while, not just in my Discord, but also on my podcast, the KLB, when we've talked about it, is that AEW really has a problem coming up with compelling week-to-week storylines. What works in wrestling is not, let's go back to the Attitude Era. Let's go back to women wearing scantily clad clothes. Let's go back to blood and guts. I mean, they are doing blood and guts, but let's go back to having, chair shots to the head and being ultra violent. That's not the answer. That is not the answer. And I know AEW does more violent stuff to separate itself from WWE, and I understand that. But the one thing that AEW should learn from WWE, and not just from WWE, from the history of wrestling, whether it be the boom period of the Monday Night Wars and what Nitro was doing during the first 8 or 9 months, even really the first year and a half of the NWO, where from May of 96 all the way to December, WCW was on fire. And that's before we even saw like the true ascension of Goldberg to world title status. Most of this is because of the fact that the NWO story was built upon itself week by week. If you go back and watch the first 6 months from May to October of 96, you'll notice that Bischoff and Kevin Sullivan were very, very good at teasing things, at building things up, at keeping us interested, having mysteries. This is what makes wrestling fans intrigued. AEW rarely does that. AEW either mistimes something or hot shots an angle without really finishing it off, or tries to do something that's somewhat controversial but doesn't really work, and oftentimes we don't even get explanations for it. Also, there's not enough character development in AEW. I think some of the characters have been well defined. I think that Jericho's one of them, but he also has a 30-year career. But of the newer, younger guys like Hangman Page has a character that we all know. We understand his character. Moxley's another guy. Eddie Kingston. But there are so many other guys in the undercard that we just don't know anything about. And their goal with the television, with the AEW TV show, is not to blow 5, 7-star matches on your show. It's to get us, the audience, to not only care about the characters, but care about what's going on with the characters, to be invested. That has always worked in wrestling, whether it be the Monday Night Wars, whether it be in the 80s with UWF Mid-South, whether it be even in the 70s where wrestling was viewed much more like a sport. You had these characters like your Dusty Rhodes and Superstar Billy Graham that were super charismatic. Not a lot of guys nowadays have that kind of charisma. Not a lot, but there's a handful that are great on the mic. LA Knight comes to mind as a great talker. Hell, even Ricky Starks is a great talker. But we don't know much about them, and I think AEW has spent time getting us, the audience, to care about its characters. I think that Tony Khan is way too invested in winning brownie points from the Wrestling Observer and from the nerds on the internet. The reality is, he's already got that audience. The people who are hardcore fans are already watching AEW, and because WWE for the past 20 or so years has slowly but surely pissed away the casual audience, you really start seeing it. Obviously, in Ruthless Aggression era, there was a little bit of that, but you still had Cena there bringing in the kids. But in the 2010s, like the mid-2010s, is when you really begin to see the damage that WWE caused by not having ongoing storylines, by having inconsistencies, by having characters get dropped, pushes get dropped. They've been effective, but they've also blown plenty of chances. I think that the Bloodline, which went all the way back to 2020 and kind of started small and got bigger and bigger and bigger, has been maybe the best executed angle in company history since the Ruthless Aggression era. The last angle I enjoyed that was this good was the build-up to WrestleMania 23 with John Cena and Shawn Michaels. I love how they were like, they teased a super kick every week, then finally Shawn hit him with it. But even this, I think this is better. I think you have to go back to like Austin versus McMahon to like really get a long-term story that was interesting week to week, that had different characters being brought in, weaving in and out. Remember, it was just Roman and the Usos at first, and Paul Heyman. Then you have Solo Sikoa coming in, Sami Zayn. You've got the different feuds with guys like Matt Riddle, Randy Orton in the past. You've got the Kevin Owens feuds, both phases of it. The Brock Lesnar stuff. So that's, to me, the strongest story WWE's told. AEW needs to do this. It's frustrating because right now AEW is doing so many things that are just so damn annoying. Like 3 tournaments at once. Like, I don't know why they're even bothering. It's just, I understand the Owen Hart thing, but did you have to have that tag tournament, that Battle Bowl now? You couldn't save that for, I don't know, August. I don't like that. You've got CM Punk in the Owen Hart tournament, now feuding with Samoa Joe. But again, as much as not only do I know of the Joe versus Punk trilogy, I own it on DVD. I started watching Ring of Honor in '04 because of that trilogy. But I'm in the minority. Many of you here are in the minority. The casuals do not really know about Joe and Punk, and they need more time to build it up. And I don't mean just a 1 minute video package on Dynamite. They actually needed time. They need to have like an in-ring back and forth. AEW is too much in the direction of filling up their shows with match after match after match and spending lots of times in the ring, which you can have some shows like that, especially your pay-per-views, but they need to book angles. They have to book cliffhangers. They have to give us a reason to watch. That first episode of Collision had that awesome CM Punk promo to start the show and the 6-man tag at the end, and there was nothing on that show, not a damn thing that had me hyped for the next week. They could have had Punk getting laid out by Joe or something, some kind of surprise, and they had nothing. And if you go back, if you parallel that to the first Nitro, you had the debut of Scott Norton and Lex Luger stepped up and challenged Hulk Hogan for the title. All of that happened in the first episode, and it was a 1-hour show. You understand what I'm saying? And Bischoff in 95 that is, was really on the cusp of developing this to have it be a show where you expect the unexpected. You don't have to have as many swerves and bullshit like that, like a Vince Russo show, even though Russo, I think, would definitely knew what he was doing during that time period in the late 90s, like when it was Russo, McMahon, Ferrara, and you had also guys like Bruce Pritchard, Pat Patterson. When they were all there working together to survive over WCW, it worked. You don't have to do that kind of stuff now, but the week-to-week storytelling to keep people interested. You can not have that many matches and focus more on angles and stories and getting the characters over. MJF, we know MJF. They've done lots of storytelling with him. We know he's from upstate New York. We know that he's, a trash talker. He's teased, leaving the company, which is a weird story outline, but I get it. So these are things that they've done right, but the shows just aren't that interesting. Seeing like Anna Jay come out, or no, it was Julia Hart come out and squash somebody on Collision, like, nobody cares. Like, dude, nobody cares. And we need more promos, we need more interviews to kind of get in the characters' heads so that we as an audience can care about the characters. Because like I said before, and I'm telling you, I know what I'm talking about, good matches don't sell as much as great stories do. End of story. That's objectively true. You can have a classic Kenny Omega Will Ospreay match, which we just saw, twice this year, and there's a long story there that wasn't really told too well in AEW, but you can have the match. But to me, there has to be a story. There needs to be a reason for us to care, not just to see, hey, they're gonna do a bunch of cool moves. And they have to do the 3-act structure, or even more than 3 acts, but they have to structure their stories and sort of weave the matches in between the stories to have it make sense. Wrestling fans want to mark out. They want to be surprised, but AEW is so formulaic that it comes off boring. How many episodes of Dynamite have opened in the past 6 months with Orange Cassidy defending that belt in like a 20-minute match? It's almost a week-by-week thing. It's like, can you try something different? Can we open up with a hot angle, or there's a fight in the back, or something? Is there anything we can do that's different? Anything? Pretty please with sugar on top? It's embarrassing. And then you've got every Dynamite at around 9:25, 9:15 to 9:30. You've got the token women's match there. It's such a formulaic show, and I think they need to break that book. They need to break that idea and make the show more spontaneous. I'm not saying to go all out Crash TV. I'm not saying to have every match get interrupted. I'm not saying to lower your wrestling time from, I don't know, let's say each hour has 25 minutes of in-ring. I'm not saying to lower it down to 3. I'm saying shave some of it off and focus on getting the characters over. That way when you have your big shows like your pay-per-views and stuff like that, your specials, they mean something. Battle of the Belts has been a complete joke. That is a complete joke of a TV special. Nobody watches it. There's never a title change on it except for like the first one or the second one. Nobody cares. me and my friends, we have not even seen the Battle of the Belts in God knows how long because it's just filler. It's like a filler show to have some title matches that don't mean anything. It's embarrassing. Like, people need, TK needs to hire somebody who's a good writer, who's a good story writer, and to come up with stories for some of these characters. Because until they do, I don't care about who they bring back, CM Punk or whatever. Like, CM Punk, a lot of folks thought when he was going to come back, and probably Khan himself thought that they were going to go back to doing 1-2s and 1-3s. Well, guess what? They haven't. And it's because right now CM Punk is just starting his first feud with Samoa Joe. But besides that, he hasn't done anything interesting. We didn't get the CM Punk versus the Elite feud that everybody thought was going to happen, like a TV version, because I guess they're not talking to each other, which is so annoying, dude, and so unprofessional. Like, you guys can come together to make money and make AEW fun again and have this great long CM Punk versus the Elite feud. You can have different factions on each side. You can have so many great ideas. But instead, they're just not going to have them interact. Nobody wants to see that, dude. Nobody wants to see that. And I know that Omega right now is simultaneously feuding with Konosuke and with Will Ospreay, but he's also one of the top guys in the company. He can do things like that. You can have the CM Punk thing sort of be looming in the background, or just have him make a passing promo at him, sort of let it bubble up slowly. But I'm not really sure the direction these guys are going in. I mean, I know they have some direction, but the problem is laying out the shows to make them more fun. AEW pay-per-views are usually worth the money. You're going to get your money's worth because you have great talent and the matches are usually are pretty damn good. But their TV shows, they're just not that good. And they really need to improve their TV show. I don't think TK should have won Booker of the Year last year. I really don't. 2021, maybe, because the Hangman Kenny Omega feud was good and Punk's early stuff was good. But I don't know, man. They got a lot of good acquisitions. 2022, I didn't like it. 2023, I actually really did enjoy AEW from starting with, I would say, Revolution all the way to Double or Nothing. But once Collision started, as I was worried, it dilutes the product. And they've got to make the shows more fun and more interesting because they're not growing. They are not growing right now. They're not growing that TV audience. And the only way it's going to happen is to have good TV, which WWE has shown that they know what they're doing. Anyways, that's it. Take care. I'll see you in the next video.